Dr. Judy Wood's student was called Michael Zabur, and they were doing an experiment, or not even an experiment, but a demonstration to essentially show that what Stephen E. Jones was saying about molten aluminium, or aluminum as you would say, was false. Stephen E. Jones claimed that molten aluminum was silvery at all temperatures under daylight conditions. In other words, if you heat aluminium up, it will melt, and it will always stay silvery in appearance in daylight conditions. This is false. If you heat up aluminium enough, it will glow orange. And they needed the hot metal, we think, to cover up the energy effects of this Hutchison effect technology, which we've sort of isolated as being the main technology that was used in the destruction of the towers. So that was the energy connection. And then Michael Zabur, just after his work with Dr. Wood posting this demonstration, he was found dead. He wasn't found dead. He was actually shot in a mugging incident in his hometown in the presence of his mother.
Wow.
And the killer was never. I don't think the killer's been properly. Well, no, the killer. If you go and look at the killer's kind of confession, and you go and check that out, it's very strange. They did apparently catch somebody and they confessed, but it's all very strange. Malov's murderer, I don't think was ever found. I don't think they ever found him. Mm-hmm. So we've got these two very suspicious deaths in relation to the energy issue. But going back to the thermite issue, I'd like to mention this Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth group, because they've been heralded with this press conference, and a lot of people have been sending around this press conference that they did. I think they've had 2 or 3 around the world or something. And it's very interesting to note when Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth seemed to appear, and it was actually only a couple of weeks after Dr. Judy Wood filed her action against NIST, or filed the request for correction, I should say, to NIST, which was to notify them that their report was fraudulent. So right around that time, we have this new group comes on the scene, headed up by this Richard Gage character, who claims to be an architect, but apparently I don't think he really is an architect. I think he's some type of developer. I think he's got some basic experience in architecture, but I don't think it's like structural engineering or that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And he's been all around the world talking about thermite and stuff like that. But what they also did, Dr. Wood's request for correction included all the directed energy weapon evidence and why the towers were turned to dust and all that evidence, and that there was no heat involved or relatively little. And then, Richard Gage and his group come along, and they submit an RFC to NIST 3 weeks after Dr. Wood does, and then this RFC doesn't mention thermite. There's no reference to thermite, the word thermite in it. There is a link to this Stephen E. Jones paper, but no paragraphs from this paper are quoted in the RFC, and none of Stephen E. Jones's thermite research, which he says is conclusive, is quoted in the RFC. So if you're trying to make a legal submission based on the evidence which you think is most convincing and most powerful and compelling and truthful and correct, then why do you exclude it from the document that you're actually submitting as the basis for your challenge to the government body? Why are you going to exclude it? Uh-huh. So this is yet another reason I've put this all onto this blog that I mentioned, 911thermitefree.blogspot.com. That's all on there, and you can go and look at the RFC, you can download their document, you can search for the word thermite, and you'll find it in a URL, an internet link reference, but you won't find any other reference to it in the RFC. In the appeal, they submitted an appeal document about 6-7 weeks later or something, maybe a bit later. They did mention thermite in the appeal document, but this referred to a 1996 study done by some fire safety group. It didn't refer to Stephen E. Jones's 9/11 paper about the destruction of the World Trade Center. So again, they had 2 opportunities to refer to their thermite research in the official challenges that they were making, and they passed. Essentially, they passed on those opportunities. Uh-huh. So why would they do that? If it's factual and it's honest and it's correct, why are you going to leave it out? Why are you going to leave that out of the document?
Because it does not stand.
Correct. And also there is this other aspect that if you submit false information to a government agency as part of a legal challenge, then you can be, essentially eventually done for treason. Mm-hmm. So there's that aspect to it. This is called the Smith-Munt Act, I believe, is in law. So, really we've got all the indicators when you study them. The thermite story is like the official story. You look at the surface of it and it looks credible. You think, planes hit buildings, they fell down. Yeah, it looks credible. Thermite is hot, the steel disappeared. It must have burnt through the steel and it all fell down. It looks credible on the surface, but as soon as you start scratching away the veneer, you realise that it really doesn't explain anything for the reasons that I've already outlined. So, the other thing about this Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth group, they've been going around saying, oh, we need your signatures, we've got 1,000 members, and then they say, well, we need Congress to do a study, we need somebody else to do a study, we need to have an independent investigation. Yeah, okay, great. But surely you've got all these architects and engineers in your group with this, 100,000 years of expertise between them. Can't they produce their own independent report among the membership? Surely you've got the expertise within your own group. Let's see your report. Let's see your conclusions. Let's see it on the website, and let's see it put into something like a fraud case or some other type of legal challenge. Which, of course, I say this because this is exactly what Dr. Wood has done. She's done the investigation. She's packaged it into a legal document, which is a fraud case, including hundreds of pages of documentation. I was involved in preparing some of these documents on the sidelines just to help out with a bit of, a few man hours and that sort of thing. We needed to prepare some lists and tables and things like that, and I helped out a bit with that. So, we worked as, I think there were probably about 4 or 5 of us. We did, Dr. Wood did the investigation. We helped package it a bit and, just maybe do a bit of proofreading and this sort of thing. And we submitted it, and it went through all the appropriate channels, and it went into the Court of the Southern District of New York. So if we can do it, why can't they do it? And why haven't they done it? This Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth group, it's been going since 2007. It's nearly 3 years old. And all they've done is they've got a website and they've got a petition, and that's basically all they've done. And they're going around the world saying the official story of 9/11 is false and Thermite did it, and that's all they're saying. They haven't really done anything else. So, we can all stand in a line and go, 3 cheers for Richard Gage doing a good job, challenging the official story and waking people up. And what's he waking people up to? A new false story. That's what he's waking people up to. And you can prove it yourself in 5 minutes just by looking at the evidence. You don't need to take my word for it. I mean, who is this guy from the UK, who's coming out with all this nonsense? No, go and look at it for yourself. Just look at the basic facts. It's very, very simple once you actually distill it down to the basic facts. It's not difficult to understand. And then people say things like, Andrew, this directed energy stuff, it's pretty far out stuff, I mean, people are not really going to believe it, and so you shouldn't really be talking about it because it's going to frighten people, And I say to them, well, look, but it's the truth. If you look at the evidence, this is the only thing that explains the evidence. So if you want to have a truth movement, are you going to tell people the truth as you see it and show them the evidence? Or are you going to worry about whether it looks good or whether it looks popular or whether it looks believable? You've got to actually look at the evidence and present the evidence. It doesn't matter whether it looks far out or whether it looks popular or unpopular or, you've just got to present the evidence and explain it to people, which is all that we are able to do. And that's what we have been doing. So that's basically the basic message here, is to go and look at the evidence and revisit what you already thought you knew. I had to do that because I was taken in by the thermite, and then I saw the new evidence and I realised that I'd been fooled, and I had to go back again, swallow some humble pie. It didn't taste nice, but I had to swallow it, go back, look at the evidence again, turn a few pages back and work forward again. And, we've seen now after another sort of couple of years of study, we actually can identify what the technology was. We know what the technology was that destroyed the towers. We don't know. That doesn't mean to say we know exactly what the weapon is. We don't know who's got the weapon. We don't know who did it. We don't know who sanctioned it. We don't know where it was. We don't know what the input power was, if it had any input power. But we do know that it operated on the principle of field effects, which is where you can mix together different types of energy fields, which are generated from, say, something like a Tesla coil, or you could mix together, for example, microwave energy and radio frequency energy. And this is what John Hutchison has been doing for the last 30 years. So this is where the evidence, you go and check the basic evidence, you tie it all together, and then you can start to draw some much better and much more high-quality conclusions.
Now, he's actually demonstrated some of these issues, and I hear the music. We'll be back in a minute. Stay tuned. Well, we're back here and get some astounding information with evidence here with Andrew Johnson, and we're going to get into some other questions I want to pose here. I want to get Andrew to continue on here, but I do have one question. Thermite, if it actually, when it exists, is it two separate components and then something triggers it, or is it actually chemically combined into one thing?
Yeah, I think basically it's actually fairly simple to make. It's literally just two powders that you mix together in the right quantities. I don't know what exact quantities are required, but then you have to introduce a hot fuse. You actually have to set the thermite going, and it does need because the problem is with aluminium, it forms a durable oxide coating, and you need a very hot temperature to actually, break down the oxide coating initially, because aluminium is actually more reactive than magnesium, but it's got this very durable oxide coating. I remember this from my chemistry lessons many years ago. And so you do need a hot fuse to actually kick off the reaction. Once you get a bit of, the thermite reacting, then obviously it's self-sustaining. So that's it. That's another question. How did they get these hot fuses? If you go and look at the thermite reaction, you can see YouTube videos, and you'll see this glowing, really hot fuse going into the thing to set it off. And then, the problem that people say to me is, it wasn't the traditional thermite. Initially in 2005, it was just ordinary thermite. And Steve Jones said in a lecture, he said, carrying it in loads, 10 people carrying in the 10 pounds in a pack over 3 days or 4 days or whatever he said. I can't remember the exact figures. He was suggesting it was carried into the towers in loads, but he didn't really say how it was set off. He did say other explosives would have been needed. Then the story started to change, because after that it became nanothermite. In other words, what you needed to do was you needed to grind up the aluminium powder and the iron oxide into very fine nanodust. And I think the argument for this was, you see, when you're talking about chemical reactions, it's the surface area which, the total surface area that is exposed to which, dictates the speed of the reaction. Mm-hmm. And so if you have a very fine dust, it's going to react, much, much more quickly than something in chunks, because the surface area, surface area to volume ratio is much greater. So, the military developed this. It was going to be super reactive, and super explosive, and it was or an explosive. It could be either. So this solved all the problems with the original thermite theory. So then it changed from thermite to nanothermite, and then I got a recording, I think last year, of Steve Jones on this radio program saying he thinks it was paint-on thermite. So he was entertaining this possibility that somebody went into the towers and painted on the steel girders with thermite. There was still no real discussion of how you'd actually set the reaction going initially. And then when Dr. Wood had sort of started pointing out these, what you call these toasted cars, you've got another lecture of Steve Jones saying that these cars were damaged by thermite which fell onto them. It's true. It is. I mean, you left, and we came up with this sort of, well, what they obviously did was we had the pigeons in New York City were all pre-wired with thermite, and they flew over and they pooped on the towers, you know. And we were sort of doing things like, and then they pooped on the cars because they missed, you know, they missed the towers and flew down to FDR Drive and pooped there as well, you know. You know, so you literally get into